it's up for work.
What was that?
Sounds like a microphone.
This place is haunted.
There's a dinosaur inside somewhere hiding. Dragon.
Is Steve doing something behind the scenes?
Speakers off inside the room tonight.
It just gives the recipe shaking it.
Yeah.
And do you have Barry on the board? You don't. Maybe what station you work on?
We ready to go? This meeting of the Board of Education is now called to order. Please stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and
to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Well, good evening, Portage, and welcome to this meeting of the Board of Education, whether you're here in person or live streaming. The board is again at full complement as we welcome back Trustee Keith Kroll. And we have a little bit of business to take care of, and that is the ceremonial oath of office. So Keith, if you want to stand, and Ian, you missed the ceremonial oath of office yourself, so we'll get that taken care of right away.
I'm going to come around front and administer this like I did last time. So you can stay in your places.
Okay.
So I'll go ahead and read the statement, and then if you agree with the oath, you can please say I do. You, Keith Kroll and Ian Hamilton, solemnly swear that you will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of this state, and that you will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of member of the Board of Education of Portage Public Schools, Kalamazoo County, Michigan, according to the best of your ability.
I do.
All right. Welcome to the board officially.
Very good, welcome. We'll get started by approving our agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda as printed?
If you would, Mr. President, I would like to move the proposed student trip to Spain up as the third item under the superintendent's report, just to Heather to get back to planning for tomorrow.
Fair enough. Okay, is there a motion, please, to approve the agenda with that change?
President Van Antwerp, I move that the Board of Education approve the agenda as amended.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion passes, and we'll move on with our agenda and start with the superintendent's report, sir. Thank you.
Great. We now have three items under the superintendent's report. The first is a bond project update, and Danny Edwards will lead that presentation.
Good evening. Thank you, Superintendent Blang, as well as members of the Board of Education with the Portage Public Schools. Tonight, we would like to provide an update to our bond work related to Central Elementary in Haverhill. Joining me tonight will be Mr. Doug Milburn from Tower Pinkster. He's a project manager for Tower Pinkster. Next to him, his left, is Ellen Duff. She's an architect for Fielding International. For our newer board members, this project is a partnership between both Tower Pinkster and Fielding International as design firms. To her left is Sean Parshall. He's the Director of K-12 Education from Tower Pinkster. Our gentleman here to the far left is Tom Stanek from OAK, our construction management firm. And just behind Tom is Doug Phillips, who's our owner's rep from Plant Moran. I'm going to invite Ellen to join me to walk you through slides, but I'll tee off a couple of the first two slides for you. First, I just want to remind the board and the public of our guiding principles. These 8 principles have helped serve us as we have gone through the design phase, from schematic design all the way to design development. And what has really been interesting, particularly for me, entering the district without having this background with the principals, it has helped me when I'm in meetings with architects and CMs. And as we've gone through this process, we've had a lot of professional conversations when we're looking at cost and budgets, and we're also looking at these guiding principles. So these guiding principles is what led the work, and we also shared them with the architectural firm as well as our CM, because we wanted them as teammates to understand what our priorities are in the district. And Ellen will talk to you a little bit about the roadmap. She'll also share with you some renderings about Central L and Haverhill. And then after which, Tom Stanek will come up and talk about construction.
Thanks, Johnny. Good evening, everyone. I'm Ellen Duff with Philly International, and as you can see, we've had a long road that we've been on. We started in 2019 with the PPS Ed Spec. That was given to us before even starting the project. It was a lot of community engagement that already happened in your community, so that was our baseline when we started this design process. So after we were hired, we started looking at schools that have been built across the country, what's working, what's not working, and making sure that we can start having these patterns of design that we can implement for these schools. And so right now, we're right between this design development and construction documentation phase. And the school will open, the first two schools will be opening in 2025. Central Elementary School, this is one of the first schools that we're working on. You can see the new footprint is just to the west of the current elementary school, coming in from across the street from the existing middle school. And so Central Elementary School has this opportunity to really be embedded in a campus that's already existing. So you'll see that with some of the exterior renderings between Central and Haverhill, making sure that both still feel like they're part of their own neighborhood while still having some coherence between the two schools. Both of them still feel like they're Portage Elementary schools. So Central Elementary School, this is one of the entrances to the building. We're looking at having this idea of being a skyward focus. This building is in the middle of a larger field, so we don't want it to feel like this large space, so it almost fades into the sky. So still having these playful elements, but also having this idea that it's not just a two-story building, it's still fitting in with the context. This is another rendering from that entry. This would be coming in from the car drop-off. You can still see in the background as well, we still have some brick that's connected to Central High School and Middle School. So it's not just a whole new direction of the building, it's still catering to those other materials that are already on the campus. On the back of the building, this is a lower area where we connect to the neighborhood. This is the area that people will see from their backyards. So it's a smaller scale, has some trees and things like that, but it's blending into the area that it's around. In both schools, you'll start to see learning community project terraces, though on the exterior you'll see that it'll look just a little bit different, but still using these design patterns, but it might look different at different schools. So each school has these community project terraces that students can come outside from their learning communities. And so not only are they having learning inside, but also outside as well. And then we have Haverhill. This is a school that will be operating at the same time as the current Haverhill as well. So it's a little bit tighter of a site, but still similar patterns that you'll see from the exterior. Instead of being in a larger open space, Haverhill is more situated along this forest line, so you'll start to see that in some of the renderings as well, to really take advantage of what the neighborhood brings to the surrounding and to the exterior. And so coming from the outside, you start seeing more of these tones of natural biophilic textures and shadow, and playing with these different ideas when students come to the school. Similar to Central, still having a grand entry that people feel welcome and home-like when they're coming into the school. And then on the back side, similar to how we were talking about at Central, having these outdoor learning terraces. So they still look different, but still having similar patterns between the two schools. One more image of that exterior area, so having more of those natural learning elements as well. Johnny.
Tom will come and talk about our project allocations as well as our timeline. Just want to remind the board that in a previous conversation, at least two things were important to the board. How the schools sat on the existing neighborhood campus, and so that's the reason why we showed you that overhead look. And then also how it blends into the neighborhood as one of our guiding principles. So we just want to remind you of that. Also, just closely in looking at the renderings, as we went through some value engineering, we made some preliminary changes in some of the exterior finishes to bring some of our costs down. So, Tom?
So, part of the first responsibility that we had, looking back in February of 2021, there was a budget that was put together, and unfortunately, probably all have experienced it in some way or another, but inflation has increased dramatically, and it really affected the construction industry. We look back at some of the price indexes from across the country, and we've seen 20% increases across the board. And an example would be like structural steel increased almost 127% in a year. So unfortunately, costs have gone up significantly from that time frame. But we've gone through a number of different steps, and we are currently at the design development or the design budget that we just recently completed here a couple weeks ago. And so these are the two numbers that we've got. We're at just over 40 million for Central and just over 35 million for Haverhill. I can say that from the pricing standpoint, these numbers are actually less than what the SD budget. As Johnny had mentioned, we did some value engineering, and I think that was actually a very good exercise that we went through with Tower Pinkster, really kind of evaluate the buildings, what is the best thing. And I think always the thing that came to mind was making sure that we kept the programs consistent, going back to those guiding principles. That was very important. So unfortunately, the numbers have gone up significantly, but that's where they're at, and feel really good at what we have accomplished to date to get there. So with that, just a quick thing on the timeline. Later in your board packet, we're going to be approving the site package, but this is essentially the rest of the project. Probably 90% of it from the standpoint once we bid this out, but we're going to eventually get started with some of that site work starting here at the end of March. We've got to work on relocating the playground and then really just start getting into getting our temporary drive off of Westnedge there and starting on some utilities and such. And then we'll get into the mass excavation. That's planned for April/May, and we've worked with the district. We actually have a meeting coming up with the principals, really talk about the coordination of how that's all going to work that's on the actual site. Footings and foundations we've got in August, and as we go through that, we'll complete the building in the spring of 2025, and then we'll start the demo and the abatement of the existing building that summer, and then obviously the kids will be in there in August of 25. So it's kind of the general timeline for Central. Haverhill is very similar from the standpoint of the finishing time part. We'll probably be lagging about 1 to 2 months from a starting standpoint and where the design is at. One of the first things that we have to do is we have to relocate a sanitary line in the right-of-way line there. So that's one of the very first things that we're going to start. We're going to start that in May. And then we'll start working on relocating the playground as soon as the school is out. So we'll do that in June. And then start with utilities and mass excavation in June, July, and then footings in September. That'll allow us to get those footings done before the frost hits for the winter. And then the completion of that is the building is in the summer of 2025, and then the kids are in August of 25. And again, we're not demoing that building because that's going to stay in place as the swing school for several years thereafter. So that's kind of the general timeline.
We'll be happy to answer any questions of the board. This is another one of those signature moments that we wanted to inform the board as we're moving now from design development to our construction document side. So any questions, and depending on
Johnny, just to go back to the numbers again, even though you're showing the February 21 numbers there, the history of this whole proposal goes back to 2019.
Correct.
When we first ran the numbers in anticipation to have a vote in 2020, and then we held off going in 2021. So these numbers really were generated before the impact of COVID was known. I don't know if you want to expound on that at all.
So in 2019, as OAK was working with our previous architectural firm, they were looking at some preliminary numbers, not really looking at the full scope of everything, but those numbers, I think they would probably say they felt pretty confident about in 2019. In 2020, August of 2020 was supposed to be the original vote for the bond, for the elementary bond, and the district made a decision to delay that decision. So that number that you see in February of 2021 is approximately 6 months before the voters approved our $175 million in August of 2021. So that number is kind of the pre-construction inflation price index that we're all seeing, not just in construction, but even in our grocery stores and other elements. So that number was a good number to get to 175. And now in today's market, for a similar program, that number has gone up.
Yeah, and there's a difference, when you look at the two buildings, obviously, and the size of the buildings, which is why the number is
square footage
larger
is
for
correct.
Central, yeah.
That is correct. And for, just to remind the board, Central Elementary will have a capacity of 600 students. Currently, right now, their capacity, we would say, is around 450 students. So this school will give us the ability to have an additional 150 students. And so essentially that learning community where the classrooms are, they have about a third more classrooms. Now, if Kelly was here, she would talk elementary language about sections, and I'm not going to bore you with those details, but essentially we would have approximately 4 classrooms per grade level at Central Elementary and 3 classrooms per grade level at Haverhill.
I think, I would say here, as a trustee, for a future discussion, the inflation and its impact on the total project, I think is something, I know you're thinking about that. And tonight's not the night.
Right.
But at some point, just sitting down and just kind of revisiting, and I know there will be various options there, and, but at some point, going deeper. So just to note that, but this is really good, and I give myself permission to let the details go up till now.
Okay.
And so now you show us this, and it starts to really become really much more concrete. And there are, pretty good open dates, and so this is very helpful.
I'm glad we were able to retain the outdoor, what is it, learning?
Learning terraces, yeah.
Yeah, that's nice. And I just think the buildings fit the property and the neighborhoods to a T, and I think the way they're placed in, I think is great. It's a lot of good work.
Will this wing school stay once all of the elementary schools have been completed? Then will it be knocked down at the very end, or?
So based on our current projection is once we finish the project, then the existing Haverhill would be demoed, and we would rework the site so it to look like that school never existed.
I was just going to ask, the learning terraces that are there, at one point in the renderings, there were second floor terraces.
Yes.
Those have been right above those.
Correct. So during our schematic design value engineering exercise, June of last year, we eliminated those. Randy referred to them as the balconies. So we removed those last summer. And then as we got more into the project for design development, our CM, they're able to put better numbers as they get more details. As we go through this process, the level of details ramp up closer to construction documents. So we were able to get numbers again from OAK, and we went through another value engineering exercise to kind of see how can we bring down some of our costs or anticipated costs without sacrificing the educational program.
Exciting. So by the end of March, we're going to have a construction driveway.
You want to talk about you talking about for Central Elementary?
So the plan is that we'll start relocating the playground at the end of March, but we'll start doing the drive the following month. we're waiting for some permits, so that we have to get that squared away with the city of Portage. It'll be shortly thereafter, yes.
Where is that construction driveway coming through?
For Central,
Yes.
from where the existing entrance is, it's going to be located to the north, approximately 75 feet-ish. There's a power pole there that we have to go on the other side of that, so.
So it's north of our
To the
current
north of the
entrance.
It's north of the current drive, yes.
From this particular, you can't see it obviously, but it's north, and then it'll come along the parking lot, the existing parking lot, where many of the baseball fans park, and then we have our shot put discus area. That's where that temporary construction road would go through.
Okay, so it's going around the current parking lot?
Yes, sir.
Gotcha.
We'll have it
Okay.
fenced off completely
I
separate.
drive along there every day, pretty much, and I could not imagine where you were going to fit another entrance in there.
It's not
Makes
ideal,
sense.
but it's-
So kind of in the athletic field a little.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, that makes sense now.
Practice area will be disrupted by that.
That makes more sense. I just,
Comment an
Really
earlier meeting,
picture
I
it.
think you talked about some of the other options that were explored that just never came to fruition.
Yeah, we actually approached the neighbor building First Source there to see if we could get some type of access from there, a shared drive of such. Unfortunately, that didn't work out after numerous conversations. We actually explored off of, what's the road there to the south? Melody. We looked at there, there's some openings there, but that gets very tight on the backside of building First Source property. Wouldn't allow some of the larger trucks to get in there, would be fine for car traffic, but, so as it turned out, we just stuck with the original plan off of Wessinger, so.
it's a good plan. It makes sense. I just was lost. I had one other question. The outdoor learning areas, I noticed it looks like one small table in the rendering. Are you planning for that being a small group type setting, or would that be where an entire class could go out to have a lesson?
It could
In the fresh
hold
air.
a classroom
Okay.
as well. And from this rendering, as we have those exterior doors, there are learning project terraces along each of those doors. I want to say there are 3 in each building.
3 on each.
Yeah, so there are at least three project terraces available at both schools.
As a teacher, having an option like that is very nice in good weather.
And, through our design work, both staff and students spoke to the value of being able to take advantage of the outdoor space for learning. So we found a way to keep that incorporated in the design. Any other questions? If not, concludes our presentation.
Yeah, lots of good work, thank you.
Thanks, Johnny. Our second report is the monthly financial update. Paula Johnson is here to do that.
Good evening, Board of Ed and Superintendent Beeling. My report will be short this evening. Included in your packet is a financial report through the end of January. 7 months of the fiscal year have passed through this report. This report does not reflect the budget amendment that you will approve later under action items on the agenda. So I'm reporting back to you still the information that was used to help compile the amendment. I just want to point out to you, local revenue appears that it is up compared to last year, and that was when I reported to you last month that property tax revenue is higher, gate receipts are higher, childcare related revenue for the Bright Beacon and Safe Harbor program are higher than what they were last year. Federal revenue is appearing lower. That corrects itself in the month of February once we received a deposit regarding the request of funds for our federal programs. Just moving down under the expenditure area, just a couple things that I'd like to point out to you. Under support services for operation and maintenance, that's appearing lower than it was last year. We are currently not buying the PPE related equipment that we were using ESSER funds for, so that's a big explanation of the variance there. And then moving down to the very last item, under support services, childcare services are appearing way overspent, but that is corrected in the budget amendment for the childcare relief grant. So everything that looks unusual right now in this report will be corrected when you see the very first financial report that has the amendment numbers in it. So until the board adopts it, we don't put it on our system. That's really all I have to report. There's really not anything to point out to you. On page 2, on the object area, everything looks to be running pretty much status quo. The only other tidbit of information to give to the board is that we will currently start working on our MSDS file related to the spring count for count day to meet a deadline to SEPI for that. So that's kind of what's on the agenda right now. Any questions? Thanks.
Thanks, Paula. Our third item is the discussion item, the Northern High School 2024 field trip to Spain, and Heather Canyenges. I'll blame this mask for not being able to pronounce your name correctly, but if you could bring Heather the proposal to light a little bit. You've done this before.
Yes, good evening. Thank you for having me tonight. I am here to amend, but I guess I couldn't amend, so we're doing a new request. We have a current trip that is approved for 2024 to Peru, but currently there is some political unrest happening in Peru. They are having a lot of protests and such, and so right now I have very few students signed up for this trip. So what I want to do is cancel the Peru trip and move it to Spain. So the students that are signed up, I've talked to those students about would they be willing, are they interested? They're interested in moving to the Spain trip as well. And then we would be combining with the Latin Club. And we're going to be on this tour looking at ruins and the connection between Spanish and Latin and just kind of going a little cross curriculum in that sense. So I'm also working with the same rep from World Strides that other student travel groups are working with. So he's helping me in getting all that taken care of as well with those switches. So the last trip to Peru for 2020 was canceled with COVID, as we know. And so I just don't want to get too far in and have these families lose money. They wouldn't necessarily lose that money, but again, the students looking forward to traveling and have it be postponed again due to that. I just would rather play it safe.
Sounds like a good plan. I know I've said this before, but thank you for doing this. Thank you for wanting to do it. These trips are many times life-altering for kids, and for them to just see how another part of the world lives and experience that culture is just amazing. So thank you.
Yes, thank you for supporting the trips. So.
Do you think that the change from Peru to Spain will make more kids sign up, or do you think it won't have?
I think so. I have a few that have asked about it, but pending the board approval, I haven't had anything set up, so. But it does sound like there'll be more. Plus, we will be advertising to a whole nother group of students as well.
As a former Latin Club member, I appreciate that you are considering the Latin Club, because Latin Club doesn't always get trips in my experience. It did not when I was in.
Right.
So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yes.
Heather, how many people usually go on these trips?
Pre-COVID, I was running 30 to 36. For Costa Rica this year, I have 15. That's with the chaperones and everybody included. Mm-hmm. So it is a little bit smaller, and understandably so, getting everybody back to travel and such. I have one or two students right now that are considering signing up, but my deadline is Wednesday. So we're right there, like 15 to 17 that will go.
And do you think Spain's more attractive than Costa Rica?
I think that there will be more that are looking forward to that. So, and with the program, I just was able, through World Strides, to go to a convention with them. in Spain and just kind of see different activities that they do. And so they have this learning experience like through action and participation, and just they really engage the students. And so I'm really excited to see how the students respond when they go, because what they had us doing as teachers was amazing, and I'm just really excited for my students to have that same experience. So, any other questions?
Sounds great, thank you.
All right, thank you. It's nice to see all of you again.
You too.
Okay, well, our comments and communication section. Is there anybody who wishes to address the board this evening? I'm looking for the speakers.
Sorry. No, we don't have anyone signed up. This gentleman did walk in late, though, so you can
Oh, okay, sir.
Good evening. My name is Grayler Walston. I'm a UNISERV Director, Labor Representative for the Michigan Education Association. Here in Portage, I represent the teachers, the transportation bus drivers, also the custodians, the mechanics, also the office personnel. So this evening, I just wanted to make a formal introduction to meet you all and to let you know who I am. And I look forward to working with you all. So very nice to meet you.
Thank you for coming. Thank you very much. Are there any comments from board trustees this evening?
Well, I will say that I'm very happy to be back, and appreciate this, and it's great to come back with construction about ready to take off, so that seems like a good launching point.
For sure.
I was going to say welcome back, so welcome back.
Keith, great to have you back. I just want to congratulate Portage Central on an outstanding musical. It was crazy, it was funny, it was colorful, energetic, wow. And we always expect a great show, but SpongeBob SquarePants, the musical, God. So, anyway, good message too, so.
Anyone else this evening?
I appreciate being able to attend the Winter Institute this past weekend, and get some additional training. That was excellent. Highly recommend the training. The speakers were extremely good. I wanted to give a shout out to the archery team. If anyone's not following them, the archery team has had males and females top first place in recent tournaments in the high school and the middle school, which is fantastic, just phenomenal. The amount of training that those students put in without being known for it very much is amazing, and it's paying off.
Anyone else? Well, I just have a couple things. As Grandma and Grandpa get to go to things, so we got to go to the Grand Battle of the Books on February 20th. So I want to congratulate all the elementary students who participated in that event. Each elementary school sent 2 teams, the 2 winning teams from their school, 4th and 5th graders. And a team from Mooresbridge came in first, and a team from Angling Road came in second. And it's just a great event to support reading. And kids were enthusiastic and looking forward to doing it again next year. So it was a neat thing to see. I'd never seen it before. And the other thing was at West Middle School, they had a band lock-in on February 17th. And they had music and dancing for the kids. They had all kinds of activities for them in the gym. And there were just a ton of parent volunteers, and they brought in a ton of food. And everybody really had a great time, and it's just a nice thing for kids, you know, in the winter you can't get out, and it was something to do, and just some examples of all the great stuff here happening at Portage Public Schools. And with that, I don't have anything else. We can move to the consent agenda, I guess, and we only have 2 items on that tonight. That's the minutes of the February 13th, 2023 Policy Governance Retreat, Committee of the Whole work session, and the second thing is the 2023-24 Board of Education meeting schedule. Are there any exceptions to the consent agenda as presented? Hearing none, the consent agenda is approved, and we can go to our first action item on page 15, which is to approve the general fund budget appropriation resolution the 2022-23 amended budget. And if you recall, this information was presented in detail at our last meeting on February 13th. And it's all part of the continuous budget cycle that the district uses to keep the community informed about our finances. So this is things we have seen before. Is there a motion, please?
Mr. President, I move that the Board of Education approve the general fund budget appropriation resolution 2022-23 amended budget number 1 as presented.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion passes and the budget appropriation resolution is approved. Our next action item is to eliminate reduced meal prices on page 25. Is there a motion, please?
President Van Antwerp, I move that the Board of Education approve the elimination of reduced meal prices for students effective March 1st, 2023 through June 30, 2023, as presented.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second?
Thank you. Paula?
Good evening again, Board of Ed and Superintendent Beeling. Brought to you tonight under action items is a resolution so that we can eliminate those reduced meal prices for the rest of the year, but I want to give you a little background information as to the why we are approaching this. Each year, by November 1st, our office is required to submit the financial infrastructure database, also known as the FID, to MDE, and they compile and look at all of our expenditures and revenues for all of our funds. And because of us being able to serve lunches and breakfast for free during the pandemic to all of our students, we had a large participation rate during that time frame. And very large claims were received, and the fund balance grew in the last fiscal year in the audit, if you recall, for the food service fund. MDE notified us after our last board meeting, you have exceeded your fund balance requirements. You must now come up with a plan for spend down. And included one of the items, we will be bringing you additional items for the spend down plan, but the item we wanted to act on right away was to eliminate the reduced option and make those students eligible for free. So that's what's included and explained in the memo to you, and we will have other items that we plan to use to invest into the food service program, because that's basically what MDE is requiring us to do, is to put that money back into the program. And this is the fastest way to get it to the students right now. And I would imagine that MDE is requiring us, we're highly recommending that we come to you for a resolution for this item, because we do bring you the meal prices on an annual basis to approve as a board. So I apologize that we didn't have discussion on this previously, but the timing didn't allow for it, and we'd like to implement this on March 1st, so that's why we're here tonight. Any questions?
I see the totals on here. I'm just curious, on a per-family basis, what savings is this going to be for families?
I'm going to consult.
Sorry about that.
I can tell you that it's approximately, it would be a benefit for about 267 students district-wide. That I can tell you.
The reduced price meals are 30 cents and 40 cents, 30 cents at breakfast, 40 cents for lunch. But a lot of the parents who are on the reduced meal program probably should technically be free, but they fall right in that cusp with the income levels, and it's a struggle for us to get funds to replenish accounts at this point on these students.
Great.
But if it's about 70 cents a day,
Yes.
so times 5, that's $350 a week.
Yeah,
And
basically.
maybe multiple kids per family, but, so that might, it's not big, but still, it's something.
It's big for them because,
Yes.
you know, we'll probably get a little bit more participation from our reduced students because the parents are absorbing that out of their own food budgets now, whereas last year they did not.
Right.
Any questions for Paula?
Well, so our vote that we just had on the budget was important but boring. And this vote will be deeply satisfying.
Yeah.
I'll try to be more enthusiastic.
I'll admit, I first read the title and thought, oh no, we can't make them pay full. And then I read the description, and I am so glad that this is becoming an option and to benefit those families.
But it's just for this year.
Correct, but we could have the option. It could go further, but that would be part of the spend down plan.
So we
So
can
right now, we're
extend
just
it.
approving through the end of June, through the end of school. Any other question? Thanks for your understanding. Thanks, Susie.
Thank you. All those in favor of approving the Eliminate Reduced Meal Prices Plan, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The action item regarding meal prices passes. Our next action item is to approve the purchase of access points. Is there a motion, please, on page 28?
President Van Antwerp, I move that the Board of Education approve the purchase of 700 access points from Vector Tech Group of Holland, Michigan, in the amount of $430,500 as presented.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Dan?
All right, as we talked about a month ago, this is a supplemental order of access points to replace our legacy Cisco canopy. I'm asking for action on this tonight because I have an E-rate filing deadline that I need to get prepared so that we can get the discounts for these access points. But I likely will not take any formal action on this purchase until April. I first would like to see how the middle schools survive with the new systems. And then we also need some time to do some site surveys so we can get an exact count of how many access points we'll need. We won't need 700, but the way E-rate funding works, you want to ask for more than you're actually going to buy, and because you can reduce your order and they don't have a problem with that. As far as the middle schools go, in addition to having a busy couple of days getting things fixed so we could open up school on Tuesday, thank you Michigan weather, we were able to get both middle schools swapped out with the new wireless systems over the break. We have 6-8 access points left at North Middle School. We have to get a lift in there to get that high up to swap them. But the work is done, the system is on, past testing. So, you know, again, I don't want to jinx it by making any guarantees. And I'm certainly not going to be celebrating until we see how this runs for some time. But I'm hoping for some very, very good news coming out of the middle school starting tomorrow. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions the board may have.
Well, Dan, thank you for all your good work, you and your team. I got our fingers crossed.
Thank you.
Any questions for Dan or any discussion?
So the totals here are based on 700, but you're saying it'll probably come in less than that?
Be less, yep. And the total there is the pre-E-rate discount, so it'll actually be half whatever our final buy is when the time is said and done. But per E-rate rules, the board has to approve the full amount. Just in some case, the E-rate app is not accepted. But as I've said before, I have no reason to believe that this app will not be successful.
Great. Anything else? Okay then. All those in favor of approving the purchase of the access points, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion passes. Thank you, Dan. Our next item is the Central Elementary and Haverhill Playground Relocation and Early Site Package. There's a motion on page 31, please.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make the motion that the Board of Education approve Owens, Ames, Kimball Company to be authorized to issue notice of pending awards in the amount of $2,223,300 to Lounsbury Excavating for playground relocation and early site work at Central Elementary, and award $890,200 to Southwest Transport Company for playground relocation and early site work at Haverhill Elementary. The funds will come from the 2021 bond.
Thank you, Keith. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Johnny and Tom are ready to go.
So both Central L and Haverhill Elementary Schools must have their existing playgrounds relocated, as we mentioned in the earlier presentation. And obviously, we know that students having recess is important. But along with that, in addition to the playground relocation at both sites, this recommendation includes the majority of the earthwork and the underground utilities The excavation of the building, concrete and asphalt will be included in the future early site package. I asked Tom just to give a little more insight on defining earthwork and underground utilities for the board.
Yeah, so the first thing that we've got to do is essentially strip the topsoil and specifically on Central Elementary, we actually raise the site. So we talk about mass excavation. We're going to bring in a lot of large equipment to do that. In order to do that, the first thing to do is to relocate that playground, but then we've got to do all the utilities, which includes the water, the storm, and the sanitary. All of those components take time, but that's a significant amount of work that gets started, and when we'll be able to get the building pads prepped and ready to go for those footings and foundations here later in the year. So that's the very first step, and the reason we did that is to move the playground equipment and to take some advantage of the good weather here this summer to get started on early so that we can actually start the harder work here later this fall. Just briefly about the bid process and standpoint, we had some great local participation, which we were very pleased about that. The contractor for Lounsbury, they did the work in 2015 for that bond work, so did a great job. And then Southwest Transport came with a very good positive number for the district, and we did post bids with both of them, with Tower Pinkster and Hurley Stewart. So we vetted those contractors out and feel very comfortable at this point to recommend those. So
We'll be happy to answer any questions.
Are either of those companies the local ones that came forward, or they're not local?
So Lounsbury is local, they're from Pawpaw, and Southwest Transport is from Hartford. Because we always kind of consider local within an hour, but that's even closer, so.
Any other questions? Well, thank you, gentlemen. This is exciting stuff because you always have to start the building with the excavation, and it's exciting to be proving that. Thank you very much. Okay, all those in favor of approving the Central Elementary and Haberhill Playground relocation and early site package, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The motion passes. Our next item is the National School Breakfast Week proclamation. There's a motion on page 34, please.
Mr. President, I move that the Board of Education approve the National School Breakfast Week proclamation as presented.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. And Trustee Larson has agreed to read the proclamation for us this evening. Thank you.
Whereas it is with great respect for the accomplishments of Portage's school food service managers, servers, cashiers, driver personnel, and substitutes that we commemorate March 6 through 10, 2023 as National School Breakfast Week. This special observance presents an excellent opportunity to emphasize research outcomes that students who eat breakfast are more alert, have improved memory and problem-solving skills, and perform better on standardized tests. We encourage all citizens to recognize the dedication and skill of our school food service employees. And whereas each day, a total of 25 food service employees prepare and serve over 800 breakfasts a day. This is in addition to ordering, storing, and expediting each menu item to each location, adhering to food safety, sanitation, and nutritional guidelines, as well as giving each customer the time and consideration to listen, hear, and deliver what they are looking for each day. Fortunately, we have exemplary professionals who have devoted their careers to providing high-quality service to our children and staff. And whereas, on behalf of our young people, it is a pleasure to commend the women and men who accept and meet the challenges of food service, school food service. The observance of School Breakfast Week is a welcome opportunity to thank these patient, caring, skilled public servants. Those involved in this pursuit should be very proud of their contribution to education. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Board of Education that we proudly commemorate March 6 through 10 of 2023 as the National School Breakfast Week. And we commend everyone who has contributed to the successful operation of our breakfast program. By working together, we can make a difference in every student's life. Proclaimed this 27th day of February 2023, Portage Public School Board of Education.
Thank you very much. Any discussion? Well, Susan, we certainly want to thank you and your staff for all the good work you do here for our students. Appreciate it very much. Thank you. All those in favor of approving the National School Breakfast Week proclamation, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The National School Breakfast Week proclamation is approved. Mark, did you want to move that student trip to action?
I don't think it's necessary, but you're welcome to do that if you'd like.
I was just going to ask if there might be a planning advantage for both faculty and for parents and students.
Well, they can't start fundraising until the board approves this, so I don't know what their timeline is for raising funds, but having that in place is certainly appropriate.
Is the board okay with bringing this to action then? Okay, can we have a motion, please, to bring the Northern High School proposed student trip to Spain to action, please?
Chairman Van Antwerp, I'd like to make the motion that the proposed student trip to Spain be moved to an action item.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor of moving the proposed student trip to Spain as to an action item, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? The motion passes. And now we need a motion to approve the trip. Bo?
Mr. President, I'd be very pleased to move that the board approve, grant its approval for the Portage Northern High School Spanish Club to travel to Spain, as been approved, as described in the material attached. Date set for June 17th through 28th, 2024.
Second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? All those in favor of approving the proposed student trip to Spain, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion passes. Thank you. We have reached the end of our agenda. Please turn in those self-evaluations to me, and we are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you, Randy.
Thank you, sir.
Travel and
Hey.
and no issues for yeah. Got to leave that night.
Doesn't have to get the kids.
It was like 30 minutes. There was just like a break in the freezing rain. Okay. Out. Okay. So yeah.
All right. Did you find that Slim and Husky spot?
I did.
How did you like it?
Good to see you.
Good.
Hey, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to call you out.
No,
Coming in late.
no worries. No worries.
Because she was talking to me and I got all flustered doing my signing in. I'm like, this guy came in late. And I'm not paying attention.
Welcome back, Keith.
Yeah, good to have you back.
Thanks, Ian. You too.
So where did you guys stay?
Sorry about that. I was just like, oh, I just called him out.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks, I appreciate it. I almost asked you as you walked in, and then I was like, oh.
There. Have the scholarship applications been sent my way? I want to make sure I didn't miss it during the hour.
I'm not sure if
Thank you, sir. Appreciate you coming to the meeting.